So we're gonna get our weekly call started off. Had a couple questions submitted. So Megan, do you want to repeat your question and then I'll go through with it?
Sure. I had a question about calorie cycling, like in the sense of alternating, like if your goal is like, for example, 1,500 calories a day, like alternating 1,300 one day, 1,700 the next day.
Okay. So I think that there's good ways and not so good ways to implement something like that. Um, whenever you're looking at your total calories per week, that ultimately is the most important thing. So if we're breaking up our weekly calories, usually we go even further and we'll break it up into how many daily calories we're taking. So for example, if we're consuming 2,000 calories per day, over the week you're going to be consuming those added up as a sum. So if we are ultimately meeting that weekly goal, then that's okay. I think that's what's most important in the grand scheme of things. But it can get a little bit tricky depending on how your days go. You have to be consistent with that. So one thing that I've done previously with clients, I used to work for companies that had more aggressive weight loss approaches, and we would implement this thing called carb cycling, where the gist of that was you would have a normal meal, a normal day of meals. We focus more on portion sizes than anything. But for example, it would be a 5 day process where day one, you would consume a normal portion of protein, carbohydrates, and healthy fats for each meal. On days 2 through 4, you would limit your carbs and you would have carbs once per day as opposed to every meal. Um, what I noticed with that is it does get some initial results. Like you do tend to see quicker weight loss early on, but the problem with it is that it's not sustainable long time. So, and think about just your week to week, your day to day. If you have a rough day where you just, let's say you have to skip breakfast and you get something on the go that might include more calories, or in this case, more carbs than we were anticipating, that could throw your whole schedule off, causing you more stress, causing you to feel like you're not achieving your goals, which ultimately I think kind of like makes things get a little bit wrinkly. And sorry if I'm like ranting a little bit and getting off
No,
topic, but
no.
I think you see this a lot with fad diets, and people don't understand the core of why these fad diets work. So whether it's calorie cycling, whether it's your ketogenic diets that take carbs out completely, whether it's intermittent fasting where you're only eating within a certain hour window of the day, ultimately what all of those things are doing is they're putting you in a caloric deficit. So in one way or another, they're taking out a main source of your intake, of your caloric intake. For example, whenever we do ketogenic diets, they tell you essentially you can eat as much protein and fat as you want as long as you don't have carbs, because the reality of somebody wildly over consuming fat and protein, it's not that likely. So you end up consuming less calories per day than you would have if you were eating carbs. Kind of same thing for intermittent fasting. If you don't eat all day and then you're told that you have a 4 to 6 hour window throughout the day that you can eat as much as you want, chances are you're not going to be able to fit as much food in those 4 hours that you would over a whole day of meals. So naturally, you're going to lose weight in that. The problem is can we keep that up and sustain that? And then also, how's it affecting our body in other ways than weight loss and muscle gain? And usually, it doesn't have good effects on the body. So what I'm trying to get out of this is I usually try to take more of a sustainable approach. I try to focus on daily habits that I can implement every day. So for calorie cycling, the ways that I do think that there's good ways to implement it would be more of looking at it from your work and your rest days. On a day that you have a workout that you know that you're going to be burning more calories and more active, I would say that it's definitely okay to consume more calories on those days than the days that you would be resting and less active. With that, I would try to think, and it depends, it differs from person to person depending on your daily caloric needs. But if you add, I'd say anywhere from 2 to maybe, let's say, 500 less calories on a rest day compared to on your work days, then that's okay. But that would also mean that you're workout days would have a higher consumption of calories than the days that you're rested. Does that make sense?
It
And
does.
probably more so than you're currently doing right now also.
Okay.
So with all of that, I just threw a lot at you. I do think that there's ways that it can be beneficial and almost like it's smarter to do things in that way. Like for example, if I just had a really good workout and I know that I challenged myself and I overloaded my muscles, it's good to sorry for getting a dumpster outside, but it's good to consume more protein and maybe more carbohydrates that day so that your body can recover and take advantage of the work that you did. On a day that you don't do that, you might not need the extra calories, you know?
Okay. Yeah,
But
no, that's what I was thinking. If I tried to do it, I would do the higher calories on the day, on a workout day. So,
now, when we do this, just to make sure that we're not like trying things and hoping for the best, I like to take like a specific approach about it. Make sure that you're doing a little bit of math and tracking how many calories you're eating those days. And before we go through the week, like let's say on Sunday, make sure you know how many calories you plan on having through each day, so that you can aim for that. And then by the end of the week, you're still in a good spot, reaching your total amount of calories, not going over or under.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
But ultimately, sorry, thinking loud out there. Ultimately, what I suggest and what I notice is just it works long term the best is teaching yourself the daily habits of how we can meet those daily caloric goals so we don't have to worry about that. Just out of curiosity, why are you interested in calorie cycling in the first place?
I just I saw like a TikTok
Yeah.
and everything they suggested was consistent with everything you recommended. So I thought it seemed like a legitimate source. Like they, encourage more protein, more hydration, walking as a good cardiovascular exercise, and weightlifting. Um, and then the fifth thing they said calorie cycling, and I didn't really know much about it, so I thought I'd
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah, so I think it's something that could be beneficial depending on like how you go about your day. I definitely like wouldn't count it out. I would just make sure that we take a smart approach about it. And then if you have more questions on like how to specifically implement it to you, let me know and we can plan out your meals a little bit.
Awesome, thank you.
And then ultimately doing that is going to lead towards my suggestion of at the end of the day, the most important thing is making sure that we have consistency with our meals, making sure that our bodies being on somewhat of a normal schedule, consuming the same things on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis. So just making sure that we're eating our meals regularly. Those meals have proper portion sizes. Typically, where I notice the most issues with nutrition is a lot of people, for example, tend to skip breakfast. And whenever something like that happens, you end up needing to make up for that breakfast later on in the day. And it's hard to do that the more and more you do that. If you end up not eating until 1 p.m. in the day, you're kind of fighting to achieve your protein goal for the day, trying to do that without over consuming fat and carbohydrates. So finding a plan that you know that this breakfast option works for you. I understand we're getting a little bit ranty, but
No,
getting your
no,
daily
no, it's all good
habits
info.
down, getting your daily habits down is ultimately what's going to lead to your success. So with where I go with a lot of these questions is we end up talking just more basic questions like, are we doing things like eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day? And if not, how can we start implementing that? Typically, if we can't do that, it's because of you're either busy or not hungry in the morning and you skip breakfast because you're on the go. And if that's the case, then how can we start having ready to go options that we make ahead of time? And that's what us coaches are here for. Whatever specific issues you deal with, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, anything across the board, I'm pretty confident that we can help you figure that out. Okay.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So this question has a couple layers to it. So is there a specific exercise or routine that can assist with firming the saggy part underneath a woman's arm? So talking about triceps. And if you had to pick an activity that could be accomplished daily with aid and flexibility, strength and endurance, how can that be done at home? Okay, so 2 questions here. How can we get rid of the saggy, flabby part under our arms and tone up our triceps a little bit better? And then what would be my recommendation for just a good all-around at-home program when you're not able to make it to the gym? Great questions. So for the saggy part under the arm, that's a really common question I get. There's two parts to that. So if we're talking about, I'd say like spot treating fat loss, trying to focus on specific areas of the body, a good analogy or like comparison that I like to use is draining a pool. So you have a shallow end and a deep end of a pool. If I was to put a hole at the bottom of that pool and start draining the water out, you wouldn't necessarily see the shallow side start to go down first before the deep side. That whole pool would start to level out, and then as it gets down to the surface, you might start to see the floor of the shallow side before the deeper end, just because that's how a pool's made up. Our body's kind of like the same way. As we start to lose fat, you can't necessarily choose which areas of the body we lose our fat from. Now, with that being said, as we lose our fat, we can define and strengthen our muscles and tone our muscles to start being more visible even whenever we're losing that fat. So if an area of our body that feels a little bit weaker than the others or less toned, one thing that we can start doing is more tricep exercises while simultaneously losing fat, because that's what depending on what your goals are, if that's what we're working towards, your workouts are going to be naturally doing that in addition to the nutrition plan that we have you on. So if we're focusing on those specific areas, in addition to that fat loss, you're going to be getting the best of both worlds, toning those muscles, but then also losing the body fat that's going to be necessary to make them more visible. So ultimately with this, you can choose different areas of your body to define and strengthen those muscles. But as for choosing specific areas to take fat away from, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But just know that you are working on that overall as you're losing fat. Your body's going to lose fat across the entire body, not just in one specific area. So keep consistent and you will see those results. And you can think of exercises like our tricep extensions. You can think of exercises that also use those muscle groups, things like push-ups, our bench press. Essentially, any upper body push is going to use the tricep as a secondary muscle group. So we get a lot of tricep exercises in here, in addition to the fat loss that's going to help you achieve that goal. Now, if I had to pick any activity that could be accomplished daily, and kind of have like a full comprehensive plan where we fill every bucket that you're looking for. We focus on mobility, we do our stretching, we focus on our corrective exercises to make sure that we're not getting any pain in areas that we overuse often. Any areas that we lack mobility in, we're focusing on those and trying to strengthen and enhance that mobility and range of motion. In addition to that, building up strength and then cardiovascular fitness. All of those things are important. So it's a little tricky to create a plan that involves all of them. This is where I'll use the opportunity to talk about the online program that we offer you guys. So even if you aren't able to make it into a class, you guys can go into your app and see every day of the week that we have for our workouts. So my go-to option would be to tell you to take advantage of that and use that. Even if you have a free weight or a dumbbell or a kettlebell at your house, you can go ahead and do most of the movements that we have here in the gym. And if we don't have a specific piece of equipment, we can always modify for that. And if you don't know how to, come speak with one of us coaches and we'll be sure to set you up for success with that. But my best answer, honestly, would be to take full advantage of that program. If you guys look at the days that you come in, whether it's a 2, a 3, or a 4-day split, there's anywhere between 1 to 3 exercises per week that you're not taking advantage of. And those I think all the movements that we do in here are really important. So if you were to come in today, but you didn't make it in yesterday, there might have been movements that you could have taken advantage of from your house yesterday that would have benefited you. So that would be my best answer for that, is to take advantage of that program, because we've already created that for you guys. And pretty much anything that I would create by myself on the side for any individual person would probably be very, very similar to what you would see on that program. Okay, so that question was from somebody that's not on the call right now. And actually, those are the two questions that I had today. So Megan, I have you on the call. Is there anything else, not to kind of throw you on the spot or anything, but is there anything else that you're curious about? Any questions you had? Anything that I could be of value to you for?
Sure. Like vital proteins that you add, like you could add it, I add it to coffee.
Yep, like collagen.
Yeah. Should you count that towards your protein goal for the day?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and if you look at the back of the nutrition label, it'll tell you how many grams of protein are in it, and then I would just add that into to whatever your goal is.
Okay. I have been doing that. I wasn't sure. I was reading a little bit about complete proteins and incomplete proteins, but I don't think I absorbed all the information. So
Yeah, so I don't wanna like start up another rant and confuse you too much. What I noticed with or what I like to focus on whenever I'm looking at protein is more so the amino acid profile, making sure that I have all the essential amino acids. Typically, you have to worry about that a little bit more as you go into more of like a vegetarian and vegan diet. Typically you get good sources of protein from animal products, and if you consume dairy, that's another option. But if you are vegetarian and you need to focus on, and if not, that's okay. But anybody who's watching this that is, Nick is a great resource for any nutrition. So I'll just throw that out there up front. But we can help you guys make sure that you're getting everything that you need and not missing out on anything as far as complete proteins, amino acid profiles, because you do have to be a little bit more specific when it comes to that. And then going even further, making sure that you're getting your healthy fats in is really important as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, that's great.
So so ultimately, like I know we already talked about it, but I feel like most of people's questions tend to revolve around nutrition and just how to implement a plan that works for them that's going to provide results. If you look out there, I talked about plenty of them today. There's a lot of plans out there that achieve results, and ultimately what the reason behind that is consistency and following the program, trusting the process. Not to just throw cliche words around, but if you want sustainable weight loss, we have to be consistent with it. And in order to be consistent with it, to be honest, you need to find a diet plan that works for you and your schedule. And I think just taking the time to sit down, possibly with one of us coaches, break your day down and look at what we're currently doing and where we can make improvements. Typically, even with myself included, like for me, I'm on the go in the mornings as well, and breakfast isn't always the easiest. I used to kind of just accept the fact that I was busy in the mornings, and I would wait until lunch and I would try to double up my lunch and make up for my breakfast. Ultimately, that led to me being like really full and bloated as I would go through sessions and not seeing the results that I wanted. As I started to look at my day and realize that if I actually wanted to consume breakfast on a consistent basis, I would have to make my meals ahead of time, so that all I had to do in the morning was pop something in the microwave for 2 minutes or just blend up a quick smoothie that's already pre-made the night before. That's what it took for me to start implementing that. A lot of people work busy jobs whenever they're out. They're constantly on the go, and things like lunch and maybe even our midday snacks can be really hard to get to. Having things like protein made ahead of time, even just a dry scoop of protein inside of a water bottle that you can put some water in, shake it up for 30 seconds and chug it and go about your day. Other things that I notice is a lot of people just simply don't have the time to cook, which I fully understand. I barely have time to, and I don't even have kids. So having different options that actually taste good, don't cost you an arm and a leg, and can be made quickly in under 5 minutes. I had to start figuring things out like that. One of my biggest recommendations for anybody who struggles to find sources of protein throughout the day is to buy a rotisserie chicken every week. That's something that if you're on the go in the morning, you could have one of those minute ready rices that you pop in the microwave for 60 seconds and it's ready. Perfectly healthy if you get the correct brand. Take a palmful of that chicken so that you have a portion of protein. And if possible, sprinkle some vegetables in there somewhere. You have a full meal ready to go in literally less than 2 minutes. Different options like that, I think, are important for people to know. And I think sometimes it's just having a meeting with us, thinking outside of the box, breaking down your day, and making a specific plan for you. And like I said, my goal is not to get ranty here, but whatever anybody who's watching this call, any of you clients, you guys all have access to us coaches. Make sure you take advantage of it. That's what we're here for, to help you guys out and figure out these different approaches with you. Because for me to sit here and say that calorie cycling or counting macros or following portion sizes is going to work for every single person, that's completely false. Everybody has different schedules, everybody's motivated by different things, everybody responds differently to different things. So I think it's important to take that into account. Okay?
Agree.
Now, if we don't have any other questions, I'll go ahead and end the call. We're actually getting a little bit close to 45 anyway. Thank you for joining today, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. But otherwise, I hope the rest of you guys got some value out of this call. Be sure next week to submit some questions ahead of time. Even if you guys can't make it in the middle of the day, I'll be happy to go over them and then record it so that you guys can take a look at this later on, okay? But
Thank you so much.
have a great day, Megan. Have a nice day to the rest of you guys watching this.
Thank you.
Bye.